This episode was filmed during the COVID-19 pandemic, so we've taken Suds and Search inside.
My guest today is Steve Hammer, president at RankHammer, a full-service digital marketing agency offering SEO, PPC, and analytics. Steve is a well-known speaker who's presented just about everywhere. His agency, RankHammer, was recognized as a Small Agency of the Year by U.S. Search Awards. His interests outside of search are also well-known. Steve takes food and beverage very seriously. No offense to any of my previous guests, but he's been by far the most knowledgeable beer fan that I've had on. Steve has been one of my favorite thought leaders during the quarantine. I wanted to touch on subjects outside of search. We'll talk about agency life, mental health, and the numerous ways the industry is changing for better and for worse. Steve, how you doing?
Oh, quite well. Hanging out here in Colorado. If there's a place you have to be isolated, Colorado would be it. Let there be no question.
Not so bad, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you had this amazing idea that I'm ready to execute on. We've got Bourbon County from Goose Island. I've got the 2017 and the 2019. I thought we might be able to taste both of these, and somebody with your refined palate might be able to give our audience a real sense of how good these are.
Yeah, Bourbon County is one of those beers that sits out there in lore. I don't know how it is in Chicago, but I know when I was in Chicago, Evanston specifically, people would get in line on Black Friday just to be able to buy the beer. It's become a little bit more available now, but I wouldn't exactly call it, something you can just count on running down to the store and picking up. So it's a storied beer. And one of the rare things we ever get to do is taste one that's aged for a little while. So I think it'll be real fun, since I have the same, obviously the same ones, the 19 and the 17. So we can kind of compare, what does 3 years do to a beer?
I love it. Yeah.
So,
well, let's do this. I'm going to start. You want to start with the 19? Is that the way you would go in this? Or I'm open to your ideas.
Yeah, let's do this. I'm going to crank mine.
Okay.
My favorite wine opener. And I'm going to pour just a little bit of each. This is the 19.
I'll start there too. I've got little tasting glasses here.
And I'm just going to keep it small because, theoretically we're supposed to get work done here. If you guys, if no one's had a Bourbon County, they are high octane beers. I'm trying to look at the ABV on one of these. 14.1. So that's stiffer than your average wine in terms of the octane that's behind it. So
maybe sipping this would be a good idea if I want to get anything done this afternoon.
These are definitely sipper beers, no question about it.
Fantastic. Well, cheers, Steve. I want to thank you and welcome you on. And
distance clank, Zoom clank, or whatever that is. Interesting. I've poured both now. The 17, just smelling between the two, because it's the first thing I'm always doing, is it's a noticeably funkier nose. Rather than just having kind of a molasses.
Oh, you're right.
Rather than just having that molasses and bourbony note, it's got like a little bit of like a forest floor or something that's along that line that's, maybe even almost truffle. I know that's sort of that mushroomy note to it. That's definitely not present in the 19, which comes a little bit hotter and a little more bourbony.
Big difference on the nose. Yeah, no doubt.
It's pretty fun to be able to do this.
All right, so that's the 19. Wow, the 17's different.
It's so different, isn't it? It's got that.
I can't believe that's the same thing.
I know, just 2 years different. Now it's getting this spicy note. I'm getting almost like a cinnamon.
Oh, bingo! Yeah.
And it's really distinct. And the finish. Now I'm going to let these sit for a little while longer before I move on. But the finish just kind of goes on the 17 and really hangs in there. I sipped the 19 a little too quick because I was kind of excited, a little too excited to get that difference. But
wow, this is a treat. And you are good. You are really good at these descriptions. I know your affinity for wine. You tell us a little bit about your background. You take food very seriously, beverage very seriously. Our mutual friend Greg Gifford says you're one of the best people to go have a meal with in the whole industry.
Yeah, I'm absolutely a hedonist. And I want to say I miss everybody that's out in the restaurant industry, miss everybody that's in the conference industry, miss everybody that has these personalized things. Like Pubcon was supposed to be about a month ago. We in Miami, obviously that got canceled, postponed.
I'd have seen you there.
Yeah. So, I miss it very, very dearly. And it's one of my true joys. I'd consider myself a hedonist, but there's a certain thing that goes along with hedonism that I don't, because I'm a very faithful person in terms of my wife. But every other aspect of the hedonism, like, the alcohol and the food and all that kind of good stuff, I adore it. It's a funny origin story because people don't realize this. I started out as one of the pickiest people you'd ever meet. Like meat, potatoes, corn, that was it. Nothing else. And the reason I got into food in the first place was to woo my eventual wife, because we'd go out to a date. I'd order, how always you go to a nice restaurant and they always have that like one really boring thing on the menu for that one picky person. That was for me.
That was for you.
So we'd go out to a nice restaurant. I'd order the most boring thing and she'd order like rabbit. And hers looked gorgeous. Mine was like gray on a plate because they knew I didn't care. Right. Yes. And so I finally got jealous and started learning to cook, learning wine, learning everything that was associated with it. And I've never looked back. And now it's evangelism as much as anything. Mm-hmm. I love teaching people about it. And I love, it kind of goes with everything I do, right? I love teaching people about PPC or SEO or digital marketing or anything I can think of, because there's just so much to know about it. This is a rare experience, even for me to be able to taste two of the same beer 2 years apart and see what they're doing. So it's literally evangelism.
You're really a great person to have on this. It's almost like we invented a show just for someone like you. It's outstanding. And but I want to kind of talk a little bit about search. But before we do, you do have this connection to the Chicago area. Your background, you were at Kellogg.
Yep, absolutely.
Is that as far back as your relationship to Chicago goes, or was there more to it than that?
It's not. My family's actually up from the South Indiana suburbs.
Okay.
So I was actually born in Maryville. Many years ago, the Holiday Star Theater. Yes, that one. And moved away, moved around quite a lot into the South in Florida, South Carolina. I've moved around a ton. And then I got the chance to get back to Evanston after a while, and go to Kellogg for 2 years. Got 2 degrees while I was there, both an MBA and a Master of Engineering Management. One of the greatest experiences of my life, even though I'm still technically paying for it. It was worth every penny of it. It changed my outlook on life. It connected me with people that are just amazing people in general. The craziest thing is there's people from my class that I haven't seen in the better part of 10 years, and we'll sit down and it's like we've never stopped chatting. It's amazing. Just that kind of connection. It's phenomenal. Plus the education, it frames everything in a much different way, and I think makes all of us a lot more effective at the jobs that we do when you have that fundamental marketing background. Yeah,
and you're one of these guys who there are people who can kind of get in their lane and all they do is I do it. I'm a local SEO, and so I get pigeonholed. You're really focused on marketing. I saw one of your talks. It was like putting the M back in SEM, and having a full stack of marketing knowledge is really something that you evangelize about. As a PPC person, how are you able to exercise all those muscles that you're interested in?
It's a big thing. It's messaging. When we look at PPC, right, we got 30 characters and 80 characters, and that's kind of the combination we have to work with. And that seems so restrictive in terms of the sorts of things you can do, right? It's ridiculous. You have no space, no way to really to expand on the kind of copy you'd like to be able to. Eat more chicken. That's one of the great marketing lines of all time. It certainly would fit in a headline. It'd get rejected for misspellings, but it would fit in the headline. Just do it. one of the great marketing lines of all time. These great lines and the great copy that connect with us, they don't have to be long. They don't have to be these wonderful, amazing taglines or 30-second commercials or anything like it. You can get your message along really shortly. At a time when I was working with the Dallas Morning News, the Richards Group, the same people that do Chick-fil-A, or did Chick-fil-A, they don't do it anymore, and came up with the Eat More Chicken concept. They had a three-word line for what the newspaper was. Its mission, its purpose: live better here. And I thought that was just a genius way of expressing even what a newspaper is and what it should aspire to do. So, these short lines that we're constrained to, sometimes they force us into ways of talking about ourselves, talking about our brands, and really allow people to connect with it. On top of that,
Awesome.
Small businesses, right? The Davids that many of us tend to work with that aren't working with the Goliaths of a Richard Group, the effect we can have on them when we apply that is liberating. It's powerful. It's
Totally.
amazing. It's one of the true joys in my life, at the very least. I don't like to be put in a little box. I want to help people wherever they can get help, and that's wherever they need help, as long as I'm capable of doing it, right? And that's just fun.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm glad we started out by talking about your background. For people who don't know, there are two great business schools here in Chicago: Booth, which is the University of Chicago, and Kellogg, which is through Northwestern, and they're kind of different. Booth is very much finance driven. Kellogg is more marketing and entrepreneurship and leadership. One of the things I think is really interesting about you, we're filming this right now during the COVID epidemic, and we can't go anywhere. And really, some of your thought leadership during this time is, I've noticed it, and I wanted to ask you about it more than I even wanted to ask you about some PPC tactics or how to sharpen my tools in that area. I had a few places to start. You've talked about mental health at conferences and elsewhere. What message could you give people who are struggling at this time? Agencies are really, I've heard from a lot of owners who are like, I didn't have a good day today. I just need to tell somebody. What message can you send?
That's absolutely the key of it all, I think. That the person who wants to reach out and talk to somebody, that venting board is out there, and it's an important one. You need to feel heard. I think sometimes the frustration, at least personally, that I deal with is, I think there are certainly a lot of people on that are struggling, that are completely out of jobs, that maybe even some of our member agencies have had to let go, or anything that's along that line. And there's support systems for those. But the pain of even having to let someone go is real as a business owner, unless you're a sociopath, and those guys are out there. But that hurts us as agency owners. So sharing your knowledge and being willing to be open and honest about it is a powerful thing. However, there's a catch-22 to all of it that makes things very, very difficult. And that is, we're agency owners, and we're not allowed to publicly talk about how we're struggling. We're just not. We have to always have that appearance of being in control and being positive towards things. And so being open and honest and vulnerable is a real challenge. I've tried to create this, and I will be 100% frank that it's a failure by any set of numbers. Open and pseudonymous, whatever Reddit is. Sure.
Okay.
That word just does not roll off my tongue. But a place where you can enter, Chaser23 as your name, have no association with it, and just share your story, and know that other people are seeing it, and are in this industry and probably doing a lot of the same sorts of things that you and I are. Getting it out there, venting, in my opinion, and a lot of the research that I've done says it's a real valid thing.
It's a real health, yeah.
It's a real health thing. We all need to be heard.
Right.
In a lot of cases, it's to get into just even gender sort of roles at times. Like men, we feel like we have to fix problems. It's sort of how we're trained, and not to be controversial about that by any stretch. Whereas there's a lot of times where we just need to listen. You know, when we're in those situations, people just need to be heard, and it helps. So vent.
Yeah.
If that'd be my number one by far advice to anyone that's out there.
Yeah, and I would say I'm extroverted by nature. I would say I like to do networking. I like to see people, hug people, be at the bar with my friends. And so it's been really tough. Like just being, you know, I have 3 great kids and my wife, and it's been awesome to get to spend a little bit more time with them. It's also exhausting, but you know, I think I'm trying to do as much as these Zoom things. I'm doing so many of them.
Yep.
It is nice just to have a drink with somebody like yourself, and this is the best I can do for now. And hopefully pretty soon I'll be able to see all my buddies here in Chicago and get back to our normal routine. But I don't know that that's going to be anytime soon. So in the meantime, I think face-to-face is about as good as we can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and we're seeing that. And I think we'll see innovation even within this. Zoom's a fine product. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But you're seeing when you have 20 people on a Zoom call, only one really gets to talk at the time, right?
Yeah.
It lacks those side conversations. I've heard.
Great point. Yeah.
I've heard about a new tool that's out there that allows you to, and I forget what it is, but one of the SEO Beers guys was talking about doing it for our next meetup, which we've done. We got 20 or so Colorado SEOs and PPC guys.
Cool.
Together on a Zoom call. We got Zoom bombed, by the way.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been hearing about this. I haven't had the experience, but I've been hearing about it. Yeah.
I don't know why people do that, but whatever. That's not for me to really figure out. But the side conversations don't happen, and those are real in a real interaction. So they're trying to get some of those modes out there. I think we'll see a real innovation in this, and that's one part of this genie that I'm really hopeful about. Actually, with all of this is the acceptance of remote work, the acceptance of. I mean, our agency is 100% remote. Everybody I have isn't here, and that acceptance, I think, is a real thing that's gonna be positive and is gonna come out of this, because and finding more organic, more natural ways to collaborate on this. So you know, there's a lot of negatives, and like I said in the beginning of this, I miss the heck out of going out to a restaurant.
Right.
Like we got takeout on Saturday, and it was from a real nice place here at nearby in Breck, and you know they went out of their way to make it look as nice as they could, and it was a fantastic meal, and I got choked up. I was crying.
Wow.
Because it's been a month and a half since I've been able to get a meal like that.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty decent cook, so like it's just that set everything off in me. So yeah, I think we'll appreciate it.
Oh, that's awesome. I saw something you had an optimistic thread on Twitter, and this was like, I know weeks are going by like months, so this is maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, where you said that you're optimistic that we might come out of this a little bit better than we did. You compared it to 9/11, where you felt like we didn't come out of that in a much healthier, better way. No. In what ways could we come out of this better, beyond some of the things you've mentioned about remote work and everything else?
Yeah, you know, I think there's going to be an appreciation for the people who really do things for us around us and every day. And you know, you got to look at what people are doing and what they're exposing themselves to right now, just to get us the silliest of things. Like our liquor stores are open here, right? And it's an essential business, as they did that because I think if they closed them down, people would riot. I think that's why it's essential, or they worry that they would, you know, break into them or something else along that line. But they're in there every day, and they're doing what they can to bring it across. And now more than ever, like even me, I know my fair way around beer, wine, and liquor. I'm going in and I'm asking them really quickly for their knowledge so that I can get in and out without doing the typical browsing thing that I would, because I think it's respectful and nice. So even that simple thing, even that simple act of like, I now really want your expertise even more than I ever did, is one of the real positive ways we're going to come out of this. We're going to have to trust people more for these sorts of things,
Oh,
which is a big time positive.
And how have you addressed it with your team? Do you have weekly discussions? Do you send out emails? What's been your approach to the people who work for you and addressing what that might be a scary thing for them and could be their health is certainly something that we are concerned about. And so if they are nervous that they have it, we want to provide every resource we can through our HR and everything else. What ways do you address this with your team? I'm trying to get better at this.
I know we're a little different. I mean, we're really small. I have hourly people as well as I have, other things. Okay. So we've been remote for a while. So it's not as daunting conversion for us as I think other agencies might be in the same situation. But people's hours are down in some cases. There's some people I haven't been able to give anything to for a while, and they know that. But the good news is those people typically, some of my hourly guys are moonlighting. So okay. I'm okay with that. So they still have other sources of income. I don't feel like I'm taking away from them or anything along that line. We use Trello for communication in a lot of cases. That's where the assignments go out, and people can work on their own schedule. That's one of the things that I think is a really interesting secondary phenomenon of all this. We can time shift now, right? Like I don't do it as much as I ought to. But if I wanted to just spend the entire morning homeschooling the kids and then work from noon until 9, that's entirely possible now. Just by boxing off the calendar and doing that sort of thing. That wasn't before. So it's the flexibility, all of the things that I think were already needed to be there were already there. In this time. So we haven't had anything that's concerning or no one's really raised any issues that are along that line. At least, we're a small team, so my likelihood's pretty low.
All right. Well, this is that. If you have any homeschooling tips too, I'm all ears. But we're struggling. Well, there's no really easy way to transition from this very serious thing into what we take very seriously as well, our work. Mm-hmm. One of the things I consider of you as you're kind of a visionary. You look forward to where things are going in search. One of the biggest changes we've seen in the last year are match types and how Google's interpreting those match types. Mm-hmm. In terms of even SCAGs or even single keyword ad group, you don't have as much control as you used to. That was a whole.
It's gone.
Maybe it'd be worthwhile. You're more of a working in the PPC world than I do. Maybe worthwhile to define what a SCAG is and why that would be such a benefit to clients who work.
Yeah, I'll jump us back into 2016 when these were a really popular concept, right? The idea of a single keyword ad group was you could tie very closely the keyword that you were targeting and the ad copy that you were doing with just the maximum amount of control. Correct. And by doing that, it allowed you to make really very specific ad copy, make sure that your bid structure was really good, and that you could focus in on taking people from one end to the other. And so what you typically end up having is you had all these single keyword ad groups for things that you knew that would convert and that would work, and then you'd have what I refer to and some others refer to as a beta campaign or a broad match campaign, which was harvesting for other potential keywords that you could add into this alpha version of things that that work. What's happened over time is Google has loosened the matches. And in some cases, these were real positive changes. There's no reason you should have to have beer and beers as separate ad groups. There's literally no reason. It means exactly the same thing. Or if somebody puts beer with 3 E's, also, there's no reason that should have to exist. So Google started that way in broadening up the matches. Now, from 2012, there were times where those misspellings had to be added as exacts, and you would run into those sorts of situations, and you'd actually find some pretty decent arbitrage opportunities. So that's another part of it, by the way, is the arbitrage is gone. So as Google has gone away from that, now they've started to mean same meaning words. But the challenge is Google's a smart, fantastic company, but they're not perfect about it. They still think milk chocolate and chocolate milk are the same thing. and countless other things. An attorney and lawyer are the same thing. It's arguably they mean the same thing, but the type of person that uses them are very different. Auto finance versus auto loan. There's countless examples that are in this thing where the type of person that does these, the value to the business is very, very different, which again was one of the reasons for the SCAGs. What we're seeing right now is there's a lot more bleed in the same into same meaning stuff. And what ends up happening is one of your terms will end up running away from everything else. So where you may have had 10 ad groups, which would have had a bunch of impressions, now 80%, all of it is going to this one ad group. And you're like, wow, what did the search volume for this term rise? No, it didn't. Those other 9 ad groups just contributed up to that other one because it has the highest quality score or slightly higher bid or whatever the case may be. So the control that we had is gone. It's straight up gone. That's my long diatribe on SCAGs, and why at some point we've got to get used to not having them anymore. Yeah.
So that's a good question then. So is the answer, are you guys just writing negatives forever? Are you exact match even, they'll say is exactly the keyword or a close variant.
Yep.
I think is the exact terminology. What does a close variant, how close is a close variant?
Not as close as it used to be. Exact-ish is what I call it in a lot of cases. Again, back to milk chocolate versus chocolate milk. It's a different thing, but it's not a different thing to exact match.
Yeah.
At this point, and it used to be, altering the number of terms. So same meaning words, and we're starting to get towards same intent words. The way we segment is pretty simple. We try to do themes that capture things. So we work backwards. We work backwards from the landing page to what the ad should say, and if it's going to say the same ad, then we put it in the same ad group.
Got it.
That
makes sense.
Tactically speaking, it's kind of simple to understand. Unfortunately, it's the opposite way that you actually build these things up, right? You start with the keywords typically and then write the ads. So we kind of have a workflow that's a little backwards to the way the workflow is intended to be, but it works, at least for us.
I love that. I heard you say something, I thought this was really interesting, that this has been true, I think, my entire career. But you said it better than I ever could, which is that Google views any money spent on a pay-per-click consultant, an SEO, a CRO person, as money that should be theirs, that is lost to some sort of a parasite almost. I think you've used that word.
Yeah.
In their eyes. In what ways does Google do that? In what ways could you see this? And well, I just thought it was an interesting point.
Yeah, it's bred out of somewhat cynicism and somewhat just the nature of corporate entities. So to be clear, I don't think too many people at Google are like, I hate those agency dudes, they stink, let's get rid of them, kick them out or whatever. That's not their mode. But at any corporation in the world, as opposed to privately owned companies, any corporation in the world doesn't have the word enough in their vocabulary. Right? More is always what they want.
Right.
So the word enough is just not there. So they can never say, no, you know what, we're making enough money, $20 billion or whatever it was. That's enough. That sentence is not allowed. So it's a proxy for corporatism, not for individuals at Google, whom I love. Thanks, guys. But the notion of what the traditional agency relationship used to be is because it was inefficient by its nature, right? If you're going to buy outdoor, even now, you need to know where to be able to put your outdoor, where are the demos going to match of the people that are most interested, how many cars go by, in normal times, or those sorts of things need to occur to make that sort of ad buy, right? How many grips are we going to get in on TV, or the gross reach points? All of those sorts of things really, really matter. And it was a very complicated purchasing process. Google doesn't think their process is complex. They're wrong, and they also think that they know better than we do how to run their own system, because they really have this real strong belief in AI, which they're good at it, no question about it. I still think the right answer is both, where both converge, where we help feed the system, and can still bring the messaging across and can tell them milk chocolate and chocolate milk aren't the same thing, dudes. You gotta separate those out, and allow us to supervise the machine learning system. And the amount of people that we can throw at it is amazing. The negative side of that is that they don't necessarily agree with that. And where you see that most evidently is in app install campaigns. I don't know if you've ever done any of these.
No, I haven't.
App install campaigns are like this. You write up your app description.
Okay.
You say, I want to run this in the United States. And the event that I want to occur is an app download. Give me as many of those as you can for $100 a day, Google. And then we'll go get them. That's it.
That's it, yeah.
That's all you get to set. So it's basing itself on what you've put as the app description. It's basing itself on what you've done and what it sees as performance. It's completely optimizing where it's showing that is. Apple gives you a lot more control than Google does in this regard.
Really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing you can do is negative out locations. When we did this for one of our clients, the first week, almost all of the app downloads were in Thailand, Vietnam, Ukraine, from people using VPN apps. That was the app that they were using, which was their own VPN app that they were paying themselves on to get these downloads, which needless to say, none of them converted to paying customers.
Correct, yeah.
So yeah, it's those sorts of things that that are a little too black box. And frankly, the parasites in the system work on both sides. Google may view us as parasites in terms of taking their money away, but there's parasites on the other end that are more than willing to take Google's money as well.
Yeah. Well, interesting. The other thing you've said a couple of times that I think is wise is, given all these changes, Google's automating more and more of the paid side of it and making it easier for people. That the role of the tactician in agencies is going away. It's becoming less needed and less useful, and the role of the strategist will likely remain. What advice can you give to young people getting started in the industry to make sure that it's sort of how you start usually, is you're the guy who dumps out a bunch of spreadsheets so the manager level person can kind of make sense of it, and you do a lot of remedial tasks.
Yeah, I have a real simple model that I've always used, and it's the Taguchi method, 5 whys. Every young person that is in any industry, anytime, should be doing the same thing. Hey, this worked. Why? Yeah. Well, it's got a higher click-through rate than the other ads. Why? And you keep asking why until you try to get to the root cause. And if you're doing it right, you build up a fishbone of all these ideas that are out there. When you get the why behind the what, you're now doing strategy and not tactics anymore. Mm-hmm. You've now elevated your line of thought, and you can take that same concept and bring it out into 20 or 30 different clients that you may encounter in a couple of years, right? Like, you can take that knowledge, that nugget, and take it from just a bid of $3.37 works here to position 2 works here because people are actually reading this ad copy and will blah, whatever, figure it out. That is one of the absolute keys. And if you don't have an answer for why, ask others what they think, and you'll get to some real powerful insights because of it. It sounds super simple, but it's so easy just to take things on face value.
I love it. Well, I want to tell you, thanks so much for everything you've been contributing to AgencyCon. We're in a Facebook group together, and everything you've been contributing on Twitter. I think these are scary times. I mean, I've only been owning this business for 3 years, and so I don't know what I'm doing, and I guess I could have owned it for 20 years, and this is going to be everybody's first pandemic, and so it's unknown for everybody. But the more people like yourself who've been doing this for a while and have been really generous with the information, to your face, I wanted to say thank you. And
Thanks, Mark. That's
we're going to get through it.
An unbelievable compliment, one that I'm not sure I fully deserve. But at the core of it, we're all in this together. And if there's one thing I absolutely love about this industry, and always have and always will, traditional advertising agencies, go ahead and try and talk to them about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Good luck. It's
So
not going to happen.
Yeah.
This industry, we overshare. We tell things we shouldn't.
It's true.
All the time. And we're more than willing to do it. That openness, that honesty, that transparency, it breeds in the best of practitioners in this industry. It's one of the funnest things about it. It beats the heck out of, trade secrets and, we got, so-and-so celebrity who's going to be the spokesman for this or that traditional ad agencies have to have. We don't.
Yeah,
because we don't get spokespeople too often for anything we do.
I get it. Well, I got to thank you for recommending these beers. This is an unbelievable treat. I really can't believe I'm doing this at 2:30 my time.
Yeah, it's an awful lot of fun. I've been tasting them as we've been going through, and they're changing a little bit in glass. The harshness of the 19 is starting to soften a little bit.
Yeah, right. Agreed. Yeah.
That heat that was originally there, and the 17 starting to come out with a little bit more complexity, and that's actually a really kind of refreshing sort of thing. That cinnamon note has given way into a little bit of woodiness and a little bit of vanilla, and as well as the cinnamon. It's still got that spicy sort of note there. It's neat. It's a treat for me too, because I don't usually get to do this at all. And I'm going to have an interesting night. Sorry for all my clients that are going to have to talk to me for anything this afternoon, because 13% beers are going to hit pretty hard at some point. I'll probably cap them up, but still.
I gotcha. Well, let's do I want to send you one more cheers from Chicago. If you're back at a alumni reunion or something like that, please look me up. And
absolutely.
Our office is located right here. It says Malt Row, so it's all microbreweries.
Oh, all the breweries, yep.
Up and down the strip. So look me up, and we'd love to.
Hey, one quick shout out. I brought this can up because it's important for.
Please, I saw this on Twitter. Yeah. The
industry that I love, and many of us do as it relates to beer. This is a beer that Other Half Brewing in Brooklyn put together. They put the recipe together, and they've distributed it to 600 plus and growing breweries around the world. One, go buy this. If you buy it, it's going to help the brewery that you love stay afloat, which is a good thing. And also portions of it are going to go to the restaurant workers that are out of work and all this other good stuff. So it's a big charitable work right now. A 4-pack is like $20. Very small way to get something you love, as well as something that's really helping support an industry that matters an awful lot to me.
You're a good man, Steve Hammer. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure.